Relax, don't worry. Lots of lists in this lecture. Don't be intimidated or overwhelmed by them. While these lists are unfamiliar to most of us in the modern West, they're lists familiar to contemporaries of the historical Buddha. All these are the most fundamental core physical components known to human at that time in India. You have one purpose in learning about these composites. You will want to find one core composite that you resonate with. So you may deepen with it, practicing until you unlock this part. Later, you can repeatedly unlock all other components with increasing ease. Now let's go through the most basic components that make humans humans. See how each is impaired, which invites you into query about how each can be repaired for access to the source of wisdom, courage, and compassion. Such source is the source for form, feeling, thinking, volition, and consciousness. Deluded, we see illusions of form, such as wavy light under the sun. Deluded, we feel illusions of sensation such as moisture or dryness, heat or cold in the palms of our hands, say, when we rub them together. Deluded, we think illusions of thought such as salivating at the thought of sour candy or experiencing butterflies in our stomach at the thought of stepping off of a cliff. Deluded, we intend illusions of volition like consecutive giant waves. Deluded, we conjure illusions of consciousness, like capping an empty jar only to enjoy its emptiness thousands of miles away. None of these delusions result from some spontaneous occurrence out of thin air or from any associated conditions such as the eyes in perceiving waves of light. To transform these delusions, you must access the root of these delusions, which is also the source of enlightenment. When you aim to transform, you experience profound states of being that continue to be delusional until final enlightenment. We human beings have 6 sense faculties: eyes for seeing sights, nose for smelling scents, tongue for tasting flavors, skin for feeling tactile sensations, brain for thinking thoughts, and ears for hearing sounds. Human beings have these 6 sense organs in common, so if there's a practice that leads to enlightening insight and even enlightenment through any of these senses, anyone can do that and do that practice to advance spiritually. Even if you have an impairment, you can still use the impaired sense faculty. For instance, the deaf hears a sound that is closer to silence. The blind sees, even if it is darkness. Through the 6 senses, you experience pain and suffering, ease and delight in the world. The reason that you experience sights and sounds as unpleasant or upsetting isn't because sights and sounds are inherently unpleasant or upsetting. It's because your sense faculties are not functioning at a level where they connect with the divine source freely. Through the 6 senses, too, you reach the source of all potentiality. More specifically, you can start with one sense. Once you master the one sense to the point you access wisdom and compassion, you can replicate the same mastery with the remaining senses. Metaphorically, your senses are tied up in knots right now, just like a scarf with 6 knots. You need to untie one knot at a time. You cannot untie 6 knots simultaneously. If you know how to untie one knot, you know how to untie all. Were you to untie each knot until all 6 are free, you would have access the all-flowing source throughout. Deluded, we see illusory forms such as wavy light in the sun. Deluded, we hear illusory sounds such as buzzing when we plug our ears. Deluded, we smell illusory scent such as iciness when we sniff rapidly. Deluded, we taste illusory flavor such as bitterness were we sick or sweetness were we healthy. Deluded, we feel illusory sensations such as heat in the other hand when we touch it with our cold hand. Deluded, we think illusory thought such as forgetting anything we dreamed about while asleep. None of these delusions result from some spontaneous occurrence out of thin air or from any associated conditions such as a sense faculty. To transform these delusions, we must access the root of these delusions, which is also the source of enlightenment. As you look out your window, do the trees or buildings outside create the perspective for your eyes, or do your eyes generate the visual landscape? As you hear music or someone talking, does that sound come to your ears, or do your ears head to that sound? As you smell the fragrance from your incense, jasmine buds, or warm cookies, so can many inside and outside the room. Does the scent arise from the thing itself, from your nose, or from emptiness? As you sample the meal before you, is the taste born from emptiness, from your tongue, or from the food? As you feel your face in the morning, who is it that feels the sensation? Is the sensation felt through your hand or your face? As you note positive, negative, and neutral thoughts that come across your mind, do you know if these thoughts occur because of the mind or apart from the mind? None of these sense objects result from some spontaneous occurrence out of thin air or from any associated conditions such as a sense faculty or an object. To transform these delusions, we must access the root of these delusions, which is also the source of enlightenment. Let's examine the sense object of sound more closely. What types of sounds do you tend to notice? Pleasant sounds or unpleasant sounds? Music or noise? Loud sounds or white noise? A preeminent Chinese Buddhist teacher, Master Jiao Guang, developed some illuminating and useful categories of sounds for people who practice listening as a meditation. Check and see if you ever think about sounds the way he did. I drew a schematic to illustrate and summarize Master Jiao Guang's teaching. I also elaborate on the background and contemporary examples to these different types of sounds for you. Starting with the big picture, Buddhist teachings frequently ground themselves on the understanding that the world tends to use dualistic paradigms, such as black versus white, night versus day, good versus evil. One of the binary principles that Buddhist theorists use is phenomena versus noumenon. Very briefly, phenomena refer to the multitudinous, mundane events and materiality that transpire. Noumenon refers to the universal singularity that is core and common to all throughout the cosmos. Human beings and our senses belong to this world of space and time, the category of phenomena. Our six senses are eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. The phenomena that our sense faculties are inclined to seek out are sights, sounds, scents, flavors, tactile sensations, and thoughts. For instance, you ever catch yourself glancing repeatedly at someone or something that keeps bobbing up and down or on and off, such as a teenager twirling a billboard ad at a neighborhood corner or flashing neon lights at a storefront? Or once you tried some sweet flavored ice cream, any ordinary fruit immediately thereafter just doesn't seem to satisfy your taste buds. Among the six senses and stimulants to the six senses, hearing is possible 24 hours a day. Hence, the Shurangama listening practice focuses on the auditory process specifically. Let me now explain sounds according to Master Jiao Guang's categories. Look at the companion schematic. Start from the top. All sounds are auditory phenomena and can be further distinguished and divided into these types of sounds. Go to the third row from the top now. One is sound of stillness. One sound that most of us don't consider to be sound is silence. The other type of sound is sounds in movement. All the moving sounds in action, they include, this would be the fourth row on the right, sounds emitted directly without interference or preponderance. Straightforward sounds, devoid of intended meaning, such as the sound of wind, water, nature. Sounds from various creatures, birds, etc. may mean to attract or repel, but with no created meaning, so would still belong to this category. Sounds emitted from an instrument intends nothing in particular except what the musician infuses and threads together. On the other side, music that is melody or song is distorted sound, in that it has been reworked, massaged, interfered with, imbued with intention. Language also consists of sounds in this category because they are mundane sounds that can be manipulated, modified, or twisted. the next row, sounds relating principles are distorted too. First, principles can be universal ideals of a lofty or base nature, theories about the good or the evil in humans, and others including religious, philosophical, or even occult teachings. The point here is that regardless of the content of the sound of this sort is contorted, even if it is sound communicating a most exalted inspiration. At advanced levels of Buddhist practice, voices sounding the highest teachings can become distractions, in that such words trigger a flood of internal discussion and thought process. Pursuing sounds of a mystical and wondrous nature at this stage prevents the listening meditator from the real work of listening to that which listens. Sounds expressing the secular are distorted. Here, secular sounds can mean sounds not about principled ideals. They are further distinguished between powerless and powerful sounds. Whether these sounds are powerless or powerful depends on the substance of the sound, but also depends on the listener. And this is now the bottom row, powerless sounds. Powerless sounds may breed scattered thoughts in you, but have no real power to add to your stress. An example may be words about the history of a distant land that you know very little about and does not appear to relate to you. You may come across these words and comment to yourself about how interesting or boring the material is, but remain composed and unaffected emotionally. On the other hand, powerful sounds may be sounds you love or sounds you hate, for in either case they have a strong hold over you. Again, these are distorted mundane sounds. The distinction here is that you lose your proper mindfulness when you hear these sounds. Think back. Some examples may include an insatiable thirst for some celebrity's concert or comedy, hysteria in the face of injustice, glee or heartbreak over fame or backstabbing defamation. Hear these sounds. All the sounds described are around you. Listen and see how you are affected. As you pay attention to what you hear and how you're listening, you may learn more about the listener. Among the 18 core composites, we've gone through the 6 senses and 6 sense objects now. They're not too difficult to understand. The 6 consciousnesses, however, may be more difficult to understand. Consciousness here refers to that which allows the sense faculty to become aware of the sense object. Take the eye consciousness, for instance. The eyeball itself doesn't perceive. An eyeball gouged out of your eye socket is gross, does not see. Having a tree before you doesn't mean you necessarily see it. So the eye consciousness is credited with bringing awareness to the eyes so they see the tree. The questions now are, does the eye consciousness arise because of the eye or the sight? Is it non-existent when there is no eyeball, no visual object? Or does the eye consciousness exist somewhere in between the sense and the sense object? The eye consciousness comes forth when both sense and sense object are present. You see the same faulty reasoning repeated here, like those of the 7 locations of the source that we talked about earlier in this lecture series. All these questions are answered with a resounding no. None of these consciousnesses result from some spontaneous occurrence out of thin air or from any associated conditions such as a sense faculty, a sense object, or a combination involving the two. To transform these delusions, we must access the root of these delusions, which is also the source of enlightenment. The core elements of earth, water, fire, and wind are not constant, stable, or stayed. For instance, earth is ultimately motes of dust made of atoms, which at the core is empty. Water turns into ice and vice versa. When you try to make a fire with a mirror and moksha under the sun, does the fire come from the mirror, moksha, sun, or their combination? Fire and all elements named here do not result from some spontaneous occurrence out of thin air or from any associated conditions such as an object or multiple objects. To transform these delusions, we must access the root of these delusions, which is also the source of enlightenment. You may not realize that the source is like a treasure chest, but these components, aggregates, and elements are all valuables for you to discover. You will uncover that the essence of form is true emptiness, and the essence of emptiness is true form. Purity pervades in and with the source. The reason that these gems become delusions for you is because you calculate with your intellectual mind according to your karma, mistaking these phenomena resulting from out of thin air or due to associated conditions. The Shurangama Sutra takes your typical list of elements and expands them. Where emptiness is considered at the core of earth and all its things, this text examines emptiness in the scientific sense as an element. On top of that are two additional core elements in the psycho-intellectual sense, named vision and consciousness here. With emptiness, for instance, were you to dig a 1-foot hole in the ground for a well, you would get a hole of space. You may dig for whatever size or quantity of emptiness you want. Now, did this delineated space generate itself? Did the earth generate it? Did the digging generate it? Does this delineated space of emptiness come and go? Emptiness and all elements named here do not result from some spontaneous occurrence out of thin air or from any associated conditions such as an object or multiple objects. The essence of these elements fundamentally pervade. All are part of the never-ceasing and never-producing true source. True emptiness is universal with the enlightened source. Vision represents the element of the sense faculties. Vision is not eyes, but the essence of eyes. Vision is a function, but it cannot tell you that you are seeing light or darkness. It does not analyze. So, is this vision part of light or darkness, or space? Is this vision separate from light, darkness, or space? Is this vision part of the combination of some or all of light, darkness, and space? Is this vision separate from some or all of light, darkness, and space? Vision and all elements named here do not result from some spontaneous occurrence out of thin air or from any associated conditions such as an object or multiple objects. The essence of these elements fundamentally pervade. All are part of the never-ceasing and never-producing true source. True emptiness is universal with the enlightened source. Consciousness is a delusion that results from the six senses and the sense objects. Look around you, and the eyes that view do not make any distinctions. It is your consciousness that identifies Mary, Susan, John. Is this consciousness born from vision, form, emptiness, or out of thin air? Consciousness and all elements named here do not result from some spontaneous occurrence out of thin air, or from any associated conditions such as an object or multiple objects. The essence of these elements fundamentally pervade. All are part of the never-ceasing and never-producing true source. True emptiness is universal with the enlightened source.